Hello there friends, my name is Rachel, GNS middle, Gilbert and Sullivan is my middle name and my middle name is my last name, and I am here today on behalf of Forbear Theatre to explore the magic of the Gilbert and Sullivan operas by very pedantically ranking every element of them. I'm getting much better at that, and today we are going to be talking about the tenor arias. I am well aware that some of the items on this list may not be technically arias, but I feel like this is the correct place to talk about them. For this category, I've actually only given them a mark out of 50. I've given them a mark out of 20 for music, just like with the duets. I've given them a mark out of 10 for lyrics. Songs will actually score highly in this category for different reasons. Some will score because their lyrics are just very gorgeous to say and feel really nice to say. Their scansion is good. Other times they do well because they just seem to perfectly capture the situation. They might be quite conversational and not sophisticated at all, but they will still get a high mark in lyrics if I feel like the lyrics are just perfect for the situation. I've also, like with the duets category, given them a mark out of 10 for narrative importance. I've also given them a mark out of 10 for dramatic impact. So I've not done emotional impact and comedic impact because I don't think the tenor arias are typically meant to be comedic. Some of them have comedic moments in them, but on the whole, I don't think it would be fair to judge them for comedy because most of them are not trying to achieve that. There's something that's just not as funny about one person singing on their own, but I think when the numbers involve more people, they do seem to be inherently funny even when the topic's about something serious. So, with that in mind, let's get started. Number 19 is Though Men of Rank May Useless Seem from Patience. This is the Duke's song. It often occurs between Soldiers of Our Queen and Doleful Train. The music for this has been lost, but I believe has been reconstructed by David Russell Hulme. And I do like the music of this number. I don't think it's maybe quite as good as some of the other ones we're going to be talking about, but I really like the opening. Da, 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 da. It's a beautiful number. I think the music is the best thing about it, because lyrically, I think it is very poor. Even if the lyrics do scan quite nicely and have some poetry to them, I don't understand how they're really relevant to the situation or to the Duke's character. This may be one of the times, like with small titles and orders and Subjected to Your Heavenly Gaze, where I am literally like here, like looking at my Bradley, like looking at the lyrics and I'm reading them over and over again and I still don't understand what the song is about. Though men of rank may useless seem, they do good in their generation. They make the wealthy upstart teem with Christian love and self-negation. Is he saying that it's good that we have fancy rich people because they inspire others to care about each other? The bitterest tongue that ever lashed man's folly drops with milk and honey, while scandal hides her head abashed, brought face to face with rank and money. And I imagine that's meant to be a joke because people in the upper classes do have scandals. All in all, I am literally reading these words and I do not know what this song is about. The YouTube video that I was watching in preparation for this, because I couldn't find it on my usual streaming music platform, if you just type in the Duke song Patience into YouTube, the first video that comes up of an actual live performance, I watched that one. It actually took me about 5 listens before I read the description and I realised that I was actually in this show. But I'd completely forgotten I was in that show. It was an Opera Victoria show that came to the GNS Festival years and years ago now. I think it was 2007. I think if there is going to be a tenor aria in Patience, it should happen there, but I don't think it furthers the narrative. I don't think it actively sabotages it. So I did give it a 5. I didn't give it less than that. But the lyrics I don't think are clever or at all relevant to the Duke or the situation. I gave it a 5, which I think is actually quite generous. The only reason I gave it a 5 is because the lyrics at least scan quite nicely and they do have a level of sophistication. I also gave it a 5 for dramatic impact, and I think that mostly comes from the music, but if anything I've been generous with this song because I feel a bit sorry for it. I think he's got the potential to be a really great character, the Duke, and it's a shame that this is his aria, and I can definitely see why it is cut. Number 18 is "O Gentlemen, Listen, I Pray" from Trial by Jury. Again, I like the music. I gave it a 13 out of 20. I think there are worse ones. I think there are better ones. I gave it a 6 for lyrics because I do think the lyrics are good. I do appreciate this song for how the lyrics scan, and they do match Edwin as a character. But I do think this song takes a while to say what it's trying to say, and also what it is trying to say is just a little bit too silly. It's got a pretty low dramatic impact, so I only gave it a 5 for dramatic impact. I did give it relatively high marks elsewhere. I gave it a 7 for lyrics, because I do think the lyrics are fine, and I gave it a 7 for narrative importance as well. But where it falls down really is this dramatic impact. It's quite short, so it's out of the way relatively quickly. There doesn't really seem to be much weight behind this decision that Edwin's making. Again, this is a situation where Gilbert could have taken it to a dark place, and instead he's made it very frivolous, which is fine, but as a result, it just means this song isn't as dramatically memorable as some of the others. Number 17 is "I Shipped Dear C" from Ruddigore. Dick Dauntless, I think, is a great character. Again, I'll be talking about him a bit later, but this song I don't think is terribly good. We do get to learn about who he is from this song, and for that I did give it a 6 for narrative impact, because I feel you learn a bit about Dick Dauntless, but the actual story he's telling is not something that is relevant to the story of Ruddigore as a whole, and I do think it requires a bit of concentration to really get the story of the song. Again, this is another song where it's not quite as bad as the Duke's song or Small Titles and Orders, but I don't really follow the story of this song very well. The lyrics are very quick, and I think it involves the actor having to do a lot of work to really get the story of this across, where in other songs, both Gilbert and Sullivan have made that a bit easier for the actor because they are able to use the music to have the effect they want, rather than relying on having to do certain things with their body and their phrasing in order to get the story across, which I think is a problem with this number. It's not a usual tenor song, it's quite quick. Dick Dauntless is a very unusual tenor character. I do like him, but this song is very different to the other songs in the list, and I think in this instance that's not a good thing particularly. I gave it a 6 for lyrics. Again, they're fine. I also gave it a 13 for music. There's nothing wrong with the music. It's just not as sophisticated, I think, as some of the other ones above it. But it does fit the situation, and I appreciate that it does tell us a bit about who Dick Dauntless is. It's just not a song that I would particularly want to listen to, or that gives me goosebumps, or is even good amongst the other songs of Ruddigore. I do feel like that is maybe something that does cause me to have biases towards certain songs. When there is a song in an opera that is otherwise extremely musically good, but this song in particular is maybe just not as good, it might make me think that this song is worse than it is. Number 16 is "Love Feeds on Many Kinds of Food, I Know" from The Sorcerer. You see, I remembered The Sorcerer this time, so we're already off to a good start. And I do think the music is good. I gave it a 15 out of 20 for music. I gave it a 6 for lyrics. I think that they do scan well. I do find it difficult to decide whether the lyrics in the chorus are so stupid that they're great or just a bit lazy. I love that love, I love it only, I love that love. I'm trying to get into Gilbert's mind writing that, and I think I get the joke. If it was a joke, that's great. But if it wasn't a joke, it's not great. Do you see what I mean? I think if he was intending that to be purposefully over the top, as in Alexis is just this insipid romantic character and he's actually making fun of operatic love, then that's great. But was he doing that? I'd like to think he was. So giving Gilbert the benefit of the doubt, I do think this is a good song. It's a funny song. But because of the nature of it, I don't think it makes too much of an impact. I only gave it a 5 for dramatic impact. I think this is actually one that may have done well if I'd had a comedy category, but again, not really that well. I gave it a 6 for lyrics and a 6 for narrative importance. I don't think we learn too much in the song. The song doesn't really have much information in it, so for that reason it didn't get higher than a 6. But it does really help you understand Alexis as a character. So for that reason it is narratively good. It certainly doesn't get in the way of the narrative. And it's a good song. I do enjoy this number when it comes along. Maybe just not as much as some of the other numbers that we are going to be talking about. Number 15 is Spurn, Not the Nobly Born from Iolanthe. Now, this song is a lot better than I initially thought it was. I think it took me several years to understand why this song is good. It does seem like a song maybe that was just shoehorned in to give the tenor something, but it does a good job in terms of political commentary. This idea that these upper class people who have money, status, they're the ones that are being looked down on and are victims. And I think this is an idea that is so pertinent to life in Britain today. Spurn not the nobly born, with love affected, nor treat with virtuous scorn the well-connected. High rank involves no shame, we boast an equal claim, with him of humble name to be respected. Blue blood, when virtuous love is sought, their power is naught. It's also got a bit of incel vibes, that idea of, how are we not good enough for you? Like, oh, you want someone all poor and noble and we're just these poor, victimised rich people. Oh God, will nobody see how worthy of love we are? So I think when that's done well and the actor plays it with that in mind, I think this song does have the power to be really, really good and have a big dramatic impact. But sadly, because of the way it is set, Sullivan-wise, it doesn't really give them the scope to be that dramatic. The music isn't mind-blowing, it's good. I gave it a 14. I only gave it a 6 for narrative importance because even though the lyrics are very good, what I've just been talking about isn't really part of the plot in Iolanthe. It could have been. Iolanthe just has so many different clever things in it, and they're not all necessarily part of the story, and that is fine. I only gave it a 6 for dramatic impact, but I did give it an 8 for lyrics because I do think that this message is good and is very relevant to people today, and I don't really mind that the story kind of slightly gets put on hold in order to hear this because it is an important message. So I appreciate this song. Thank you for existing, song. Number 14 goes to Were I a King in Very Truth from the Grand Duke. It surprises me that the one offering from the Grand Duke is quite low. I think of the Grand Duke very highly, especially their music, but I don't think this song is one of the better songs in the Grand Duke, and I don't really think it's particularly mind-blowing lyrically or dramatically. I gave it a 15 out of 20 for music. All of the music in the Grand Duke is very good. It is catchy, and what is good about it is that it does tell the director what to do movement-wise. When I direct things, I listen to the music and I think, right, how can I best represent that musical sound through choreography? And in this instance, it's clear what you have to do. That tells you it's a skippy thing, and it tells you there's a jump in it. It's quite specific, that number. You don't have to do that. I've seen productions where they don't dance at all, and it is fine. But if you are going to put dancing in, it's one of those ones that's quite easy to choreograph, and I do appreciate that. I don't really think that anything we learn in this song is particularly relevant to the story. It's just making the point that Ernest would be a good leader, but then we never see him as a leader again after this. I did give it a 7 for dramatic impact because, as I say, it's a catchy tune, the chorus response is fun, there's usually something that you can do with that music movement-wise. It's quite heroic sounding. There's something very rousing about it, and it's a good number to get the chorus off the stage before Julia's entrance. I do appreciate the position of this song dramatically. So all in all, this is a fine song. I do appreciate its inclusion, but I don't think we would have been particularly distressed had this song not been included. And it has some funny moments in it, which I do like. It's nice that the chorus are given the opportunity to come forward and present themselves and do things in accordance with what Ernest is saying. That is fun. The point that theatrical troupes are difficult to run and a person who could rule one of them could rule anything is a funny point in general, and I do appreciate that point being hammered home. So I think it's got its place. Since I do run a theatre company, it's certainly not a very big theatre company, but I do understand how, because there are so many things that have to be done, and your job is not only creative, but it's also practical. It involves money and logistics. You honestly have to have almost every skill in order to do it. I actually haven't seen any of the problems that Ernest is talking about in the second verse in my own theatre company, but I have certainly seen them in other theatre companies that I've worked in. Number 13 is When First My Old Love I Knew, from Trial by Jury. I do think this is a slightly better song from Trial by Jury. It is expositional and it does give us a lot of information. It tells quite a good story that's very engaging. You don't really have to concentrate too hard to get the meaning of this story. The lyrics are fun, the tigga-tank, 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 tigga-tank. The reason I think it didn't come higher is maybe musically it's not as sophisticated as some of the others that come above it. I did only give it a 12 for music. I think it scored the lowest out of all of them. But I gave it an 8 for lyrics and I gave it an 8 for narrative importance. I even gave it a 7 for dramatic impact because I think it is a very catchy song. I think it really rouses the audience. Even though there's not much tension or stakes in it, I do think you are brought into the story, and depending on how well the performer does it, I think it can be very engaging. At last one morning I became another's lovesick boy. So you can see how the tension is built a little bit and then relaxes again for the chorus. This is a chorus that is really loved in the community. Whenever I do a Trial by Jury potluck at the festival, I always love how much the audience love this song, and it's fun to sing. It's fun to echo Edwin. I do love this number. It's one that makes me happy, and for that reason it is a little bit higher than its list than maybe I would have imagined it would have been. Can you tell I've got a bit of a cold? My voice is not quite as tuneful as it usually is. Number 12 I have given to Would You Know the Kind of Maid from Princess Ida. I gave it a 15 out of 20 for music. I think it is very pretty. I gave it a 7 for lyrics because I like the way that the scansion feels. I like the poetry of it, even if it's not particularly relevant to the story. That's what brought it down, really. I only gave it a 6 for narrative importance, but I did give it a 7 for dramatic impact because I think that this song is very funny. I think the audience love it. It's Cyril's chance to shine, and I know tenors who would actually prefer to play Cyril than Hilarion because they love this number and they love getting drunk and being silly, and it is a silly song. I don't really like the content of this song as a feminist. Unless I've misunderstood it, I believe he's saying that he doesn't like it when women are very flamboyant and loud and joyful. He prefers it when they're more demure. And I guess the joke is that he is currently being very drunk and very silly. So I don't think that when Gilbert wrote this song, he meant the audience to get that message. I think in this song, Cyril is very much the butt of the joke. I don't think women are the butt of the joke, so I do think we just about get away with it. It's not a song that I consider to be terribly problematic because you can see that the lyrics are being said by somebody whose opinion about women isn't particularly valuable. So I don't mind that the lyrics themselves are not terribly nice towards women. They do flow very nicely. I love how Sullivan set it. I do love how Gilbert and Sullivan work together to create this tension in the verses, which is then released in the chorus. With pouting leaves I had seemed to say, oh, kiss me, kiss me, kiss me. It is very clever. And I do think the music is really good in this song. I think Sullivan set it extremely well. It is ostensibly simple, but absolutely perfect for the number. Number 11 is Take a Pair of Sparkling Eyes, or Tapos, from the Gondoliers. I love this song, especially when it's done well. Like, honestly, when this song is sung by a really good tenor, it doesn't matter that the lyrics are kind of generic. It's not meant to have any narrative importance, this song, so maybe it's not fair to judge it as such. However, there are songs that I think the music is better for that do have direct relevance to the story and whose dramatic impact is greater. This is just a pretty song. It works well out of context, but when it comes to the story, I don't think it has much of an impact. The only impact it has is just how good the singer is and how good the song itself is. It is a beautiful song, but that is, I think, all it is. Number 10 goes to Today We Meet / Ida Was a 12-Month Old, from Princess Ida. I gave this an 18 out of 20 for music. I think the music is absolutely gorgeous in it. Sullivan, again, does a really good job at producing tension in that recit, which is then released slightly in the aria. Funnily enough, I think the recit might be better than the aria itself. I don't think the lyrics are mind-blowing. They're quite funny, but it's a little bit like Oh Admirable Art and that joke about the breastplate. It's essentially one joke that's told over 2 verses. And the joke, I don't think, is funny enough to justify so long being spent on it, but it is a lovely song, and I do appreciate that usually these tenor arias are very simple plot-wise. Not a lot of plot progression happens in them, but there are songs where more happens than this one. I gave it a 6 for narrative importance and a 6 for dramatic impact. What's odd about it is that it's not even that emotional, the song itself. The recit, I think, is emotional, but the song itself is actually quite vanilla and just do 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 do. It's very pretty, but I don't think it arouses much emotional tension when it really could have done. I think if the song had been a bit better, I think if the song had been a truer continuation of what the recit promised, it may have come a bit higher. Number 9 goes to A Wandering Minstrel Eye, from the Mikado. I gave this a 16 out of 20 for music. I gave it a 7 for lyrics, and I gave it an 8 for dramatic impact, because I do believe it has a huge dramatic impact. My very first Gilbert and Sullivan related experience was seeing my sister in a university production of the Mikado. I didn't even know who Gilbert and Sullivan were before this. I think the only things I knew are what I'd seen in The Simpsons. So imagine me as this 16-year-old going to see this production, and yes, you get the opening chorus, which is quite short, but then suddenly this character comes on and he has this absolutely show-stopping number that goes through loads of different musical places and lots of different dramatic and emotional places. I don't have a strong memory of how I responded to that song, but I must have been like, ugh! My mind must have been blown by that. This song has forever held a very special place in my Gilbert and Sullivan heart, because apart from If You Want to Know Who We Are, it is the first song I heard. It was the first GNS solo that I ever heard. And I do think it is famous for a reason. I think it is a famous song, and it does deserve to be so. I think it's great musically, it's very dramatic. I love the gentleman's chorus responses to what the tenor is saying. I love how it segues through different musical styles. Where it does fall down is its narrative importance. is not at all relevant to the story of the Mikado. It's actually much like We're Called Gondolieri. It's beautiful and it is an introduction to the character, but what is it actually saying about the character? That he has the ability to entertain people in this way, but then that character's ability to entertain is never brought up again, I don't think. He makes a lot of references to being a second trombone, but his ability to perform isn't actually relevant to the story. And so for that reason, I did only give it a 5 for narrative importance. I must stress again that I do not think it's a problem when songs occur that don't have too much narrative importance, as long as they're very pretty / funny or have some kind of reason for being there. It's just that I think that when songs do have a lot of connection to the story, it is just a bit better. And so that's why the songs that have done well are songs that have the most narrative importance. Number 7, I have given to Free from His Fetters Grim from the Yeomen of the Guard. I gave it a 17 out of 20 for music, and I gave it an 8 out of 20 for lyrics. So I think that Gilbert and Sullivan did a very good job here. I also gave it a 7 for narrative importance because it does tell you a bit more about Fairfax's character and about what he feels about this marriage. And getting this idea about Fairfax being this character who just wants to be free, that song does do that very well. Where I think this song suffers is its dramatic impact. Even though it's really good that we have this slightly stiller moment in the opera, the song I think is in a way almost a little bit too wistful. And the music does that too. It's really glorious with those pizzicato strings. It is lovely musically and I wouldn't want to change it. But other tenor arias have managed to have like a huge like wham dramatic moment, and this one simply does not. It's a wistful introspective number, which I do like. I think the introverted characters in Gilbert and Sullivan are very interesting, and just lyrically having Fairfax compare marriage to prison is intelligent and quite funny. I wouldn't say this song is ever laugh out loud funny, but it is pleasing. I think this is a pleasing number and I enjoy it. Number 6, I have given to a number that I have pulled out of an Act 1 finale. It's not an aria, but I think it deserves a place in this list, partly because the other song that this character sings does so terribly badly. And that song is Your Maiden Hearts Are Do Not Steal from Patience. It is the shortest one we'll talk about, but I think it lasts long enough to be included in this list. It is a highlighted moment for this character. It is this character's moment, even though he is speaking for the chorus. He does have autonomy. He's not a chorus principal. I gave it a 16 out of 20 for music. It's mostly quite simple and not terribly inspired in the orchestra, but that vocal line, especially in the third part, a teardrop to yours, it marshal eye. It's very emotional and I think Sullivan set that really well. I love singing tenor. It makes me so happy. Maybe I should be a tenor. I also gave it a 7 out of 10 for narrative importance because it does remind the audience, and I think it's a really important reminder, that these men are genuinely in love with the maidens and they would actually be really nice to them. I love the Dragoons chorus. I'm talking about choruses in a different video. It really encapsulates how full of love these men are, but also how unable they are to express themselves emotionally in the same way that Bunthorne is. And actually they're the genuine ones. Bunthorne's a fraud. But it's the fact that Duke has to keep reminding them, sigh, sigh, or sigh, huh. It's very funny and it's really emotional. I think this is one of those numbers where if it's done to its absolute best, you could be laughing one moment and crying the next. The only drawback to it is that the Duke doesn't really have a partner yet. Usually he's put with Ella in this, but then at the end he just seems to forget Ella exists. So I think somebody did joke about writing Patience 2, Ella's Revenge, because she doesn't end up with anyone. Often it's a solicitor, isn't it? I gave it a 7 for dramatic impact because even though I do think it can be very emotional and very funny, I think it would be asking quite a lot of the actor to make us feel those things because of the reasons I've said, because we don't know too much about him as a character or about the person who he loves. Number 6 goes to Oh Zara, my beloved one, / a tenor or singers above from Utopia Limited. I remember at university being absolutely obsessed with this song. I thought it was literally the funniest song ever written. And I do think that I was right. I do think it is really, really funny. I love how meta it is. I think the lyrics are really clever. When his sensitive palate as dry as the crust is, a tenor can't do himself justice. You can tell I'm the audience for this kind of stuff. It's so stupid. The rhymes are so bad, but they're so bad they're good. And I think that was entirely intentional. Ah, do not laugh at my attempted sin. When tenors can actually sing that, it's really good. I don't really like it when they do it very badly on purpose. I do like to see them try and actually hit the note if they can, and that is a very high note for tenors. Easy for me. I do love it when they hit the note and then lose it rather than fail to get it at all. I gave it a 16 out of 20 for music. I think it is really good, but there maybe are some that are better. It's very romantic. Da, 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 da. Narrative importance. Utopia Limited songs don't often have narrative importance, and I believe this was the fashion of the day. It was more common for pieces like this, for comic operas, not to have very strong plots and just be a lot of musical numbers interspersed with some kind of vague plot. So I don't think this is a failing of Utopia Limited, it's just that what was in fashion then isn't particularly appreciated now. So I think as a song on its own, I think this is incredible. This would work out of context really, really well. And I love how meta it is. I think Gilbert does meta stuff very well. And I think that's quite unusual for the time. The way that Gilbert's brain works is quite different to most creative people. There's actually an argument, in my opinion, for Gilbert maybe being a bit on the autistic spectrum, and I say that knowing a lot about the autistic spectrum myself. There's something about his brain and his comedy, what he believes to be funny, that does make me think that. And this song is a perfect example of that. He really spends so long on jokes, and sometimes I think he spends too long on jokes, but then sometimes he spends so long that it gets not funny, but then he continues and then it becomes funny again. And I think this is an example of that. But I gave it a 9 for lyrics. I think the lyrics are brilliant in this one. And I gave it a 7 for dramatic impact, not because the stakes are very high, but it's just such a cracking number and it opens the act. And I think it really makes people sit up and listen. It really engages the audience. And even if it doesn't make them feel sad or romantic, it's just a cracker of a number. It's just one of those numbers that really makes people sit up and listen. Number 5 is Life a Boon from the Yeomen of the Guard, another song that Colonel Fairfax sings. I do think this is slightly more emotionally and dramatically impactful than the second act song. It comes at a time where even though the audience have been let into this plot to rescue him, he hasn't been rescued yet, so he still thinks he's going to die. The lyrics in this song are very clever. It shows a philosophical appreciation for life that is both sophisticated and also quite accessible, especially when there aren't soldiers dancing incomprehensibly in the background. I gave it a 17 out of 20 for music. I think this was the second incarnation of this number. There is a version of his life of Boon that came before this one, which I can't remember how that goes, but I know that it's not as good, and it's really bizarre to hear that in comparison to this one. Sullivan does something here in the orchestra that really makes you feel like you're on a journey with Fairfax. I also love how different the first and second verses of this song are orchestrally. Musically, let's just say musically. The first verse is very stately and decisive, and you're able to understand what it's like to have resigned yourself to being in a position that he's in. Orchestrally. The word is orchestrally. And those strings are so sad. Da, 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 bum, bum, there's something very somber and funereal about them, and it's very dark. This is so dark, but also there's hope there too. It's important not to understate the amount of hope in this song. I think this song actually might bring a lot of comfort to people. I think it's one of those songs that just reminds you to really appreciate your life. And that's not to say that you aren't allowed to be sad. It's just to appreciate that life will have its ups and downs, and that let's just all try our best and be grateful for the time that we have. The second verse, the strings are no longer bum, bum, there's tension there now. There's more emotional importance in what Fairfax is saying in this second verse. Life is a struggle, and that it's hard to be alive. And for some people, life is a battle every day. It's really philosophical, this song. I love it. What I was saying in the duet video about getting that kind of rush of serotonin, I get that in his life a thorn, then count it not a whit, nay, count it not a whit, man is well done with it. There's something very exciting and dramatically important and relevant about the first bit of that second verse. And I, war-torn, poor captured fugitive, my life most gladly give. To think that you'd have silly soldiers bobbing around in the background of this number. I'm not one of these people that thinks that we must stick to tradition and everything must be played very straight at all times. Oh my God, I'm like the least straight person ever. However, there are some numbers that are just so philosophically beautiful and so lyrically important, and have the opportunity to give the audience a message that's not only valuable but comfortable. And to think that you would have choreo in the back of this number? Why are you doing that? How dare you? Honestly, I mean that. Us GNS lunatics, we're not these like traditional, fussy, stale people that you think we are. The people behind these screens that are saying, how dare you do that? It's because we understand what these songs are about. We understand the importance of messages like this, and how dare you do that to this material? I'm glad I got that out. And yeah, of course people laugh. People are laughing because silly stuff is happening. But it means they're not listening to what this song is about. It is disrespectful to Gilbert, and I will not have it. Not on my watch. So I don't think this song does have a huge dramatic impact. I only gave it a 6. If you think about this compared to some of the other ones I'm going to be talking about, even about other moments in the Yeomen of the Guard, it isn't the most dramatic moment, but I do think it is wonderful and philosophically important. It's lyrically beautiful and the music is gorgeous, and I will leave that one there. Number 4 goes to Oh Is There Not One Maiden Breast from the Pirates of Penzance. Now, a tenor I know very well will be very sad that I put this in number 4 and not number 1, so I'm sorry if you're watching. But this is my personal place for it. I gave it a 16 out of 20 for music. It is gorgeous. Again, I love how the music tells the director what to do. Those bum. It tells you that there's some explosion of movement and then a release. Duh, that's what you do with it. This is Frederick's really big moment. He is imploring the ladies for help, and it is really emotional. I gave it an 8 out of 10 for dramatic impact. It does rank really highly for me. I don't think the lyrics are particularly relevant to the character because I don't think that Frederick has a terribly well-defined character, if I'm honest. But I will get into that in a later video. What I love about this number is the fact that Frederick is failing socially because of his lack of exposure to, well, women, but also people in general. He's not actually insulting the women. He's trying to be very kind to them. None of you will marry me, not even the really ugly ones. Oh, but I don't care what you look like, even if you have a bad complexion, I will still love you. You do get the idea that Frederick is just so sweet and so full of love. And then you get that from Mabel as well, which is why they work so well together. And this song, wow, I mean, musically, it is just glorious. And the big, I love you, I love you, I love. Oh. You see, this is why I want to be a tenor, because I want to sing those big, like, sweeping, dramatic notes. You don't really get them too much as a soprano. Am I right in thinking that? Can anyone tell me a moment that a traditionally female character gets to have the same dramatic impact that Frederick gets at the end of Maiden Breast? Because it seems to me like this is very much a tenor thing. Like the Duke's, a teardrop dews its martial eye, and the some that we haven't even talked about yet, which are even better. Hello, Daenerys. Are you going to say hello, Daenerys? Because I feel bad, because in my duet video, my cat came up behind me and I didn't acknowledge her and she looked so sad. So I'm just letting you know, Daenerys, that you're very welcome to be a part of this video, aren't you? I don't think that this song is the most exciting tenor aria in the list. I think it is beautiful. Yes, it is beautiful, isn't it, Daenerys? And again, this is my bias coming into this because I'm always playing Mabel. I've played Mabel about 5 times now. And traditionally, my experience with this number is waiting nervously to sing my aria. So perhaps that's maybe given me a slight bias against it. Number 3, I have given to a nightingale / a maiden fair to see, which is Rafe's gorgeous aria from HMS Pinafore. That's so funny. Why is she staring at me? Do you ever feel like you're being watched? What's really interesting about the tenor arias, actually, is that their earlier work seems to be, on the whole, better than their later work, which is at odds with, I think, the songs and the music in general. But certainly in the case of this aria, this is ethereal, it is gorgeous, it evokes such emotion, not necessarily from the words, but just the music. It's got that same quality that Words of Love Too Loudly Spoken has, this gorgeous, ethereal, floating quality. A nightingale sighs for the moon's bright rays. When a tenor does have a beautiful voice, this must just be an absolute joy to sing. I like to sing this number. If somebody wants to cast me as Rafe, I'd be really happy about that. He sang a well a day. The chorus responses, they're barbershop. They're so sexy. I love the men's chorus responses here. And also, I think that there's a joke in this song that is funnier than almost any joke. This joke is funnier than any joke we've talked about so far in this video. And it's not a joke that people ever put too much emphasis on. I know the value of a kindly chorus, but choruses yield little consolation. Because it's so meta and it's so casual, but it's also very emotional. If the actor truly means that, then it's very, very funny. Because it's this idea that his journey, his emotional journey, is extremely real. And everything he feels is extremely real to him. I mean, this man almost unalives himself later in this opera because of the way he's feeling right now. But he also lives in this world where these guys will just come around him and sing in response to what he's singing. In his world, the kindly chorus is just a part of his life. And the idea that that is just said in such a throwaway comment, I find extremely funny. A maiden fantasy I don't think is quite as interesting as the rest of it, but it's still beautiful. Oh, pity, pity me, a captain's daughter she. So yeah, hugely narratively important because it takes them a while to get there, but you do eventually learn who it is that he's in love with. I gave it a 9 out of 10 for narrative importance. I gave it an 8 out of 10 for lyrics. They could have been higher if they were more relevant to the story at first, but they're just so beautiful, and Sullivan set them so well. And I gave it a 9 out of 10 for dramatic impact because it is just glorious word painting, and it's this beautiful moment. It's probably my favourite musical moment in HMS Pinafore. Perhaps that made it go high for me because it stands out of an opera that I don't see as being relatively sophisticated compared to the other ones. I couldn't really be too clickbaity with this video because number 1 did not surprise me in the least. Like, I knew that was going to come top because I actually consider it to be my best Gilbert and Sullivan song, full stop. We will discover later if that is correct. But number 2 did surprise me. I didn't think that this song was as good as it is. And it is Thou Hast the Power from the Sorcerer, so Alexa's second act aria. I gave it an 18 out of 20 for music. Again, this surprised me. I don't think too much of the music in the Sorcerer generally compared to the music in other operas, but this particular song is not only orchestrally sophisticated, but also just fits the lyrics very well. And the contrast between the verses and the chorus is just perfect. Just how good are these lyrics? Hold on, I'm just gonna read them out. Thine is the power and thine alone to place me on so proud a throne that kings might envy me, a priceless throne of love untold, more rare than orient, pearl and gold, but no, no, thou wouldst be free. How good is that? Like, not only is it just beautiful poetically, but it's also quite accurate to how these toxic relationships work. I have been a part of lots of discussions over my GNS career, and I might get into this more when I talk about Alexis as a character, but I'm going to talk a bit about it now because it's particularly relevant to this song. But to anyone who doesn't think that Alexis is the villain of the Sorcerer, like, seek help. Because this guy, this is abusive. His language towards Aline is not nice here. And what's so perfect is the contrast from that initial number where he's all soppy and romantic and insipid, and this number, he is incredibly toxic towards her. So he's saying that because you don't want to have a spell put on you to give you no option but to love me, this is really powerful language, and the music perfectly reflects that. Because the verses are harsh, but then the choruses are romantic again. But this romance isn't because Alexis genuinely feels kind feelings for Aline. This perfectly encapsulates the manipulation that goes on. Thy love is like a flower that dies within thee. The music is beautiful, the vocal is beautiful, but what he's saying is so unkind. And that's what it feels like to be at the receiving end of this kind of manipulative emotional abuse. You can hear the gaslighting in the music here. If such thy love, oh shame, call it by other name. Like, you're not feeling love. You're feeling something else for me. What I feel is love. And you should be feeling that for me. And because you haven't, you've failed. Even though Aline does love Alexis. Aline cares very much for Alexis. To me, it's Alexis that doesn't understand what love is. I really hope that was what Gilbert was thinking. Otherwise, that's not good. Alexis is a deeply, deeply problematic character. And this song is so accurate in what it feels like to be in that situation and have someone tell you that your feelings are not what you think they are. And you are not feeling or reacting in the correct way to this situation because you have done something that I don't like. I am saying that it's not correct. I love this number. It's an important number. And I think when it is done, it really should be given the weight it deserves. And let's not forget, there's the glorious big tenor moment. It is not love. Oh, what a great note. Yeah, I don't mean to bring this down because we are still talking about comic operas, but what a moment of fury and moment of darkness, along with Scafio and Fantas and Utopia Limited. This is one of the moments where you truly get to see a character let go and show their true colours in a way that he's been somewhat repressing this whole opera, and now it's all coming out. This is how he really feels. He was the perfect, wonderful, kind partner until something happened that he didn't agree with. And either I'm reading too much into this, or Gilbert was actually so on it and so ahead of his time in terms of how toxic relationships can be and how easy it is for people to get sucked into toxic situations. And for that, I think Gilbert should be retrospectively commended. I think he did the world a great service here by showing us an abusive relationship, by painting it initially as the very pinnacle of earthly joy. Oh, everyone should be as happy as we are. And then in the second act, you realise, wow, these people, they are not happy. At the first sign of conflict, this is what happens. I want to do the Sorcerer again now. I feel like I understand the Sorcerer a lot better just as a result of really getting to grips with this song. And that's what I really love about the fact that I'm making these videos. Because even though I've literally directed the Sorcerer, and I did have some of these feelings towards a song, I remember discussing it with the two people that were in it, I don't think I quite understood the weight of it until now, until listening to the song over and over again, really understanding where it should go in this list. And I think it more than deserves its place in second place. 8 out of 20 for music, 9 for lyrics, 10 for narrative importance, 10 for dramatic impact. Number 1 of the tenor arias. I was not at all surprised this song came top. It actually got the same mark as the one below it did, but this one has to be top. I think it's one of the most perfect moments in a Gilbert and Sullivan opera, and that is Whom Thou Hast Chained from Princess Ida. It's actually taken out of the Act 2 finale of Princess Ida, but anyone who thinks that this song does not deserve to be talked about in its own right is incorrect. So Princess Ida was the very first Gilbert and Sullivan show that I was in. I was just in the alto chorus. For some ungodly, grotesque reason, they cut this song. Like, I don't know who was responsible for that, if it was the musical director or the director, but if you are watching this, and you know who you are, that was a really bad decision. Why would you cut this moment? It is absolutely gorgeous, and it is narratively important. You really understand the love that Hilarion has for Ida, but in a way that is earnest and genuine and frustrated. I gave it a 9 for narrative importance, I gave it a 10 for dramatic impact, and I gave it an 8 for lyrics. I gave it a 20 for music. In every list, I will always make sure I give at least one song full marks for music, and it had to go to this one for me. It's one of those ones that I just get tingly and goosebumpy when I listen to. If kindly death should set me free, why should I fear to die? If kindly death should set me free. Why do the tenors get all those moments? It's heartrendingly beautiful. This song could be done in a way that makes Hilarion seem a bit pushy and a bit abusive, like even in the same way that Alexis is in his second act aria of the Sorcerer. But to me, it's just full of such genuine love in a way that the other one isn't. Hilarion and Ida get to emotionally connect a little bit before this song and get to know each other and to love each other. And even though this is not explicitly said in the text, you can tell that Ida is starting to warm towards him before all of this happens. And that this is his plea to, not to necessarily put all of her principles aside, but just to say, listen to me, please give me the space to express to you just how deep my feelings are. And Hilarion has been a relatively quiet and introspective character up until this point. And when you consider that, the dramatic weight that this has is enormous. All these other characters have been talking for him, being drunk, silly, falling in love with Melissa, etc. But Hilarion has himself been quite quiet. And then suddenly you get this outpouring of very genuine emotion from him. It is musically sublime. Its lyrics are, I wouldn't say quite as good as Alexis's lyrics, but still gorgeous nonetheless, very eloquent. The way this person expresses himself is so truthful. I don't think it's possible to deliver these words and not really mean them. It's a little bit like Frederick in a way. I don't know if he has enough information about Ida to know if he truly loves her, but he's certainly infatuated, and that is a genuine thing. Like, he's not in any way trying to manipulate her here. That emotion is so perfectly captured in the music. Sullivan, what a great job he did here with this number. It is just divine. Is it one note? Kind of. But just the utter emotional impact of this song is, to me, what brings it to number one. It is an example of a song in the canon that is completely devoid of humour, but still manages to completely enrapture the audience and have this huge impact in a way that maybe None Shall Part Us does not. I would want to play Hilarion one day, for sure. I would absolutely love the chance to be able to sing this number on stage. What a beautiful number. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Most of the edit jumps in this video will be because I was sniffing and wanted to cut out the sniffing noises. So I do hope it goes away for the next video. So go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Next time we will be ranking the dialogue scenes in Thespis. So I will see you then.